Okay, good afternoon everybody. My name is Vincent and I work in the training and documentation team. I've got a couple of hot picks to bring us towards the lunch time. It's a nice session to have just before the lunch break because you're probably not going to be concentrating on me, but rather the smells that are going to be permeating from those doors in a moment. But without further ado, what I'd like to do is just introduce my first hot pick, which is auto-mirroring of content. The idea that I want to get across is if you were, for example, looking for a quick and easy way to mirror your content to multiple parts of your website. Now, it is possible to do that at the moment. You can do it manually by taking your content. You can then decide to mirror to a section, pick that section, but imagine if you have 10 or 50 or more sections that you want that content to be output to, it's going to take quite a while to do that each one at a time. So how can we speed up that process for your end users? Well, the idea of auto-mirroring of your content is to help speed up and make a nice, quick and easy way for your end users to actually go ahead and do that. And you can see here I've said a quicker and easier way for your end users to mirror their content. And the idea is that when we mirror this content out, it'll only actually be mirrored out to the sections that your end user has chosen at the point of that content actually having been approved, which probably makes good sense. I'm going to illustrate this by using an example. I have up here a news article. So we have the US re-electing Obama as president. It's going to go into my general news part of my website. And what I'd like to do is, at the time of adding this content, I'd like to mirror that content out to any other relevant parts of my site. And you'll see in a moment, I have other parts of my site where I have relevant news for Australian news, Canadian news, Irish news, UK, so on and so forth. So what I want to do at the time of actually adding this content is decide that I want to mirror that content out to some other sections. Now this might be for countries, you might use this for topics, there are many applications of this. What I'm going to do to allow my end user to actually do this is add a new element to my content type. So in my news content type, towards the bottom, I'm going to have, over here at the top left-hand side, a new element where I'll have a multi-select list and I'll allow my editor to then select, in this case, Ireland and the USA, to decide where they want that content to also be mirrored out. Once the content is approved, that content is then mirrored out to those sections that you've selected. So how do we go about and do this? I've got a nice little list for me to actually keep on track as to how we do this. The first thing we'll need is obviously a 7.3 installation, but also you'll need to make sure that the auto content handler has actually been installed. So let's go in and show you how you do that. If I just log into the software here. Okay, so here I am logged into 7.3. To show you the auto mirror content handler, I'm going to go into tools and I'm going to come down here to configuration. And I'm looking for the handlers tab. And you can see that I already have it installed. I have on my PowerPoint slides the actual handler name, so if you need that after the session, you will find it in the PowerPoint slides. I have it already installed here. What I'm going to do now, just go back and consult my handy list. Next on the list is to create a list itself. I'm going to go into my software, and I'm going to go to Assets and Lists. And just to give you an overview as to how this list actually works, the list is going to be assigned with my country name. So for example, UK, Ireland, Australia, and so on. I can then go into my handler and I can assign the values of those lists to actual sections. So when my user selects in my element, in my content type that they want to link to, for example, or mirror rather, to Ireland or to the UK, I've set it up in my handler that each value in my list links to a particular section. I've created a list already. I've called it the auto mirror list of sections. If I come in and just show you what I have in here, looking at the entries, I have a number of values in here that are already assigned to sections. What I'd like to do is add a couple more just for good measure. So let's put in, for example, Germany maybe, and let's go for another one. Let's add in South Africa, for example. So I'm going to update my list. Excuse me, a couple more elements or a couple more values in my list. Let me consult my PowerPoint slide. Next thing then is to assign those values in the list to actual sections on my site. So how we go about doing this? Back into Tools and Configuration. And I'm going into the Handlers tab. into the auto content mirror handler. This time I'm going into the configuration, and if I just expand that up, you can see here that I have a list of all the lists available to me. I'm interested in the one that I created called Auto Mirror List of Sections. If I click on Show and Hide Entries, you can see that a number of my entries have already been assigned to sections. I just want to assign the ones I've added, so I added Germany as an option. If I click here on Select, what it's going to do is bring up your site structure. You can then find in your site structure the section that you want this list value to actually link to or to mirror content out to. So bear with me for a moment, I'm just going to find where my sections are. So under News, within Regional News, I should have German news. So the value of my list for Germany will link or mirror the content to the German news section. And while I'm here, I'll do the same for the South African one. And there we are. Okay, so that's been added. I'm going to update my auto mirror content handler, and let's see what's next on the list. Okay, so once you have your list created, you need to incorporate that into your actual content type. So I've already done that, but I'll just show you how you can go about adding that in yourselves if you are going to be modifying any of your existing content types to bring in this feature. So if I go into my news template under the sample data, let's see where we are. There we are. So go in here and I'll just show you the content type itself, the element. Down here, I just called it also mirror content to other sections. You can maybe come up with a more intuitive name to guide your editors, but effectively I'm adding an element into my content type which will guide my end users if they'd like this content to be automatically mirrored out to other sections. Once it's approved, they can do so. My preference is to use a multi-select list to do this. So I'm just going to come out of here. No need to make any updates there. I've already added that element. And now we have the moment of truth. I'm going to modify that piece of content, and I'm going to see if we have Germany and South Africa as my new options. I'm going to click on those, and we'll see if it mirrors that content out for me automatically. So if I go back to my site structure, and I have this in my main section here called News. If I modify this content, and a bit further down, you'll see my multi-select list, and that's working quite well. I have Germany and South Africa has now been added in to that content type, pulling in from the list that I've assigned via that auto content mirroring handler. So let's test it. Let's check the box for South Africa and also for Germany. And most importantly, I'm going to update and approve, because this content will only be mirrored out upon approval. So we'll click in here. And I can come down here and just have a look at that Maltese cross that I have there, and you can see that this content is also appearing in the breadcrumb trail. We have South African news, and we also then have German news, and we can always just go back to the site structure and do a preview of, let's take the South African section. There's one piece of content in there now. If I preview that, we should have my news item auto mirrored out to that content. And there it is, so that's working quite well for me. Okay, so that's the auto mirror of content. Any questions regarding that particular hot pick? Yep.
Is that the best way to do, is that the most performant way to do things like taxonomies and is it top stories and top content as well?
Did everyone get that?
Yeah, it's another option. I mean, you can still use you can use nav objects to achieve much of what's there. As well, in terms of picking things up when you're publishing. And what we will be doing going forward is working on a more generic aggregation object to allow you to slice and dice content at publish time, but also at consumption time on the website as well. So,
okay, so there's no performance hit for having a million or many mirrored items?
it's down, I mean, it's down, yeah, it's only dependent on the taxonomy you've set up. This is a particular client enhancement. They didn't want their users to have to manually go in and do the mirroring by hand. They wanted that to be automated for them in this particular case. You can achieve similar things using nav objects, etc., which might be a bit more performant. Ultimately, you're still writing the same pages. So the hit's going to be in the database for the content.
I think the benefit is that you're pre-mirroring as opposed to publish time. I suppose to an extent there's also different use cases. If you're using navigation objects like top content or keyword search, what that will do is it will publish the full text page, if there is a full text page, in the original location, whereas with mirroring, and the specific use case for the customer was they wanted the full text page to appear under German news, under South African news, so that when you clicked onto the full text page, you weren't brought to another part of the site.
In terms of the breadcrumb, for example.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks.
What about this? There's one at the back, I think, as well, John, unless it's been answered.
If you have a piece of content which has a link to a section in it, and then you mirror that piece of content, does the mirrored piece of content point back to the original section? Or what happens to that link?
In general, it would point back to the original section when you're using this mechanism. If you're using another piece of functionality we have for mirroring entire branches of the site, depending on your configuration, it can, if you are linking to somewhere within the same branch that is mirrored, for the original section it will link within that, and within the mirror it will link within the mirror, so there's a configuration option there for that.
That's a great question, because Vincent's about to show you exactly that. Were there any other quick questions on this?
Hi. Isn't there a problem with moderators? And if you mirror a piece of content to a section, then the moderator of that section then has control over that content, which in turn can come up in the original section.
There's permissions of your mirrored content, got different moderator access to the section. Who's got access to it? I think your question is about if you've got different moderator access in the section you're mirroring into, what happens to the...
With regard to the access rights, both the moderators of both areas would have access to it for mirrored content. For mirrored branches or mirrored sections, any mirrors of the original are read-only.
In the destination.
In the destination.
So you can't achieve it. You basically want to restrict permission for the destination mirror. You can do that with the mirroring. I think we talked about branch mirroring last year. I think one of you kindly called it useful mirroring. So I think on that note, maybe Vincent wants to dash through.
Shall I?
The next one. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. My next hot pick of the afternoon is the mirroring of sections itself. So we've had a look to see how it is possible to mirror content. To be fair, that's a feature that's been around for some time, but the auto content mirror handler might have some uses to make the mirroring of the content out to many sections quite useful, quite a quick way for your end users. But let's have a look at another feature which has been available, but I feel it's underutilized. When I've gone around to visit clients, I've noticed that they either haven't enabled this particular option or they're unaware of it. So I'd like to make you guys aware of it. If you are aware of it already, apologies. But just to point out, it is possible not just to mirror content, but to also mirror sections or entire branches of your site. And the example that I'm going to use, seeing as I already have a news part of my website created, I'm going to actually take that entire branch of my news section, so my main news, my Australian news, Canadian news, and so on, and I'm going to mirror the entire branch, and I'm going to mirror it out to my mobile channel, which has been created for me. So then when I'm outputting content to my mobile site, it's just taking it from my main actual site. So let's go in and see how we can do this. So again, just to set the scene or the context, we have over here on the left-hand side of your screen, as you look, or right-hand side rather, you can see my site structure. This is on my main web page at the moment. What I want to do is take that site structure, so taking the branch, in particular the news part that I've created, and just mirror that out to my mobile channel. So a quick and easy way to actually manage the output of the content on your mobile channel. And we're going to do that by using a feature which is to mirror the entire branch. So again, I have a nice little list just to keep me on the straight and narrow as to what I need to do. So the first thing is to go in and check the configuration just to confirm that the mirroring of sections has actually been enabled. So this might be a place for you guys to look when you get back to your offices just to make sure that you have this enabled if it's something that you want to use. So if I go back to the software, and I've got far too many tabs open now. Let's see. This one will do. Okay, so if I go into my tools and configuration, I'm looking at another handler. This time I'm looking at the handler called the hierarchy handler. So if I scroll down a little bit here, I should find it. There we are. And if I come in and have a look at the configurations list. Okay, so all you need to do now is decide which sections or which branches you actually want to mirror. And then you obviously need to decide where you want to mirror them. And we can have a look at some rules, which answers one of the questions there as to what you do with the rules around that content itself that's inside those sections. So let me go back to my site structure, and I'll take the site structure that I used for my earlier example. So here's all my news and regional news. I'll take the section that I called Vincent's homepage, and down in my list of my section drop-down menu, I have an option here to mirror that entire branch. So if I click on that, here are the rules then. It's asking me a number of things. First thing, it's asking me which section do I want to mirror this branch under. So if I click on the select button, again, it throws up the site structure screen. I'm going to mirror this in. I have a mobile channel already set up. So if I click here, it's going to mirror that entire branch and its content over. So if I click to mirror under the mobile home page, I can decide what you want to do with any access control options that you have set up possibly. So do you want to mirror them, duplicate them, or ignore them entirely? And then I think this touches on the question to the left side of the room. What happens to those actual links in that content? Does it link back to the original source, or can we do it within the sections itself? You can decide in here. If you want to retain the section or content link targets, you can check that box in here. If I click on mirror, it's now going to take my entire branch from the Vincent homepage, the news, South African news, German news, and so on, and it'll then mirror it out to my mobile channel. So there's my little green confirmation. If I come down here, have a look at the mobile channel, and expand, that news section was there already. That's not one that I can take credit for, but down here is the Vincent's homepage, and I don't know if you can actually see on the screen here, but there's now a little arrow. In this case, it's pointing in to the section where content is being mirrored out, or rather the section itself is being mirrored. The original section, being the Vincent's homepage up here, has an arrow pointing out, so you can see which one was the master, which one was the slave. That's the right terminology. And importantly, the content or the sections here that have been mirrored from my main section is read-only, as Paul mentioned a moment ago. Let's see if it's actually pulled through all that content. So I have Vincent's homepage. Let's do a preview of that section. And oops, let's see, I think I've got far too many tabs up here now. I think Firefox is stopping me popping up any window, so I'll allow, and we'll go again. There we are, okay. So if I just imagine this is my mobile channel, just to bring down the browser there. Let's have a look in Vincent's homepage. Let's look in the subsection called News. I had a further subsection. So here's my main news item in my main news section. If I go into the regional news, let's have a look at the South African news, because I know I'd mirrored it out there. And there's my content, happily enough. If I click in there, I can see the alternate formatter. So a nice way, really, to manage the output of your content if you are going to have a mobile channel, rather than having your users creating the content for both channels. Okay, so any questions?
We trialled section mirroring with our users, and in the end they asked us to switch it off because they couldn't unmirror it once it had been done. They couldn't break the mirroring, they couldn't undo the mirroring operation once it had been done. Has that been fixed now?
Right, I understand. Does the section itself have to be deleted?
Once you've mirrored a section, you've got to delete it. Yeah, you did it the other day.
I did it by deleting.
If you delete, you basically mark the section inactive and it should be fine now. Yeah, yes, you logged a bug in that particular area of Griff, and I think it's been fixed. So basically, you basically delete the section you've mirrored it into.
Okay. Okay,
and that'll delete the mirrors.
So that won't then set the original section to be deleted by having done that? Which is
no, the original section will be retained, as far as I know.
Yeah, I can actually test it live.
I'm pretty sure you tested this with me last week.
It's going to be quite brave.
Yes, no.
Okay, putting my job on the line as a presenter for Terminalfour.
Oh yes, let's try it. Super.
So here's a section, bear with me on this one, guys. Here's a section that I've mirrored in. You can see the arrow saying it's mirrored in here. Let's delete that entire section. And if I were to purge it then from the system, let's go in and find that one. There it is. Let's confirm that's going to be purged. And there we have the original remains. And down here in my mobile channel, that mirrored section has now been removed. Does that help? Yeah. Thumbs up. That's great. That's always good to see. Any further questions on...
Thanks for that, Griff. Any other questions? Peter.
Was uncertainty in the mind of the user that they weren't accidentally going to purge the original section by doing so. There was no confirmation that it's okay, you really are only purging your copy of it. If there was some kind of feedback on that, it would be quite handy for the user, particularly the occasional user, who might have to do this and isn't familiar with what's actually going on behind it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. What I'd always look for is, where is that arrow? Is that arrow pointing into the section or out? But I can understand how some users... Yes. Agreed. Any further questions? Okay, I'll wrap up my session and get set up for the next hot pick.